Hi, I'm Krylios, producer and MC for Team Rayceen Productions and announcer for the Ask Rayceen show, held every first Wednesday at HRC Campaign and hosted by the legendary Rayceen Pendarvis, who joins me today with the president of HRC, Alphonso David. How are you guys today?
We're great. Thank you for asking. And thank you so much for being here with us, Alfonso. First of all, let me ask, how are you personally handling this challenging time?
I am handling it as best as I can. And that's what I ask for my team to do, which is rise to the occasion, recognizing all of the challenges that we're facing, engage in self-care, but also remember that we are still facing significant obstacles as a community and we have to continue pushing forward. So for me, I work out every day, I run every day, and I work very long hours to make sure that we're still advancing the mission of LGBTQ equality. So short answer is I'm doing okay.
Good. How about that? And that's so important. You're taking care of the organization. You're making sure your team is intact, but most of all, you're taking care of yourself mentally, physically, and spiritually.
Yes, and that's so important. And 2020 so far has been a big year. So much is happening. But one of the things that will also be happening is the election. And we know HRC has always been involved with that. So tell me, how is HRC contributing to political change this election year?
So I have been saying for months that the upcoming election will be the most significant consequential election of our lifetimes. I say that because we have someone in the White House who is working day in and day out to erase us, to erase LGBTQ people and other marginalized communities from the books. He has done that with executive orders, with agency actions, with submissions to the Supreme Court to make us inconsequential, to remove us from relevance. And we have to do everything in our power between now and November to make sure that we mobilize, we engage, and that we participate in our constitutional right to vote. Now that we are sequestered in our homes and our living rooms, we can still participate in the process. We can still utilize a variety of tools to make sure that we engage with our fellow LGBTQ community members as well as allies. So the Human Rights Campaign launched an app recently, and the app essentially allows you to interface with members of your family and your friends on the election and what's important and the issues that are important to LGBTQ equality. We're also conducting virtual Tuesdays where we do effectively phone banking, but virtually, where we're using social media to make sure that people are engaged on the election process, they understand what's important in their home districts, and that they are going to help in any way that they think they can to make sure they increase awareness about the election. This is about awareness. It's about making sure that we all understand that we have the political power. We all do, individually. And if we work collectively, we can affect significant change. So we're doing a variety of things, but the goal is to make sure that we elect pro-equality candidates in November, not only for the presidency, the Senate, hold on to the House of Representatives, and also make sure that we elect pro-equality candidates at the state level as well.
And thank you so much for that, because that is so important, especially in a time like now when, if we're ever placed in a situation like that, we want people who will be looking out for the best of all people and not just, for only a select few. So we love that.
And that's so important. It seems to me that you have many of the priorities this year for the election cycle already in place. You have a plan, and that's so important that people know that HRC has a plan. Is anything else that you want to cover around the election that we might have not touched on?
Well, I am focused on also addressing voter suppression throughout the country.
Mm-hmm.
So many people may have heard about voter suppression efforts as it relates to racial minorities. So a Black woman in Georgia is trying to vote. She show up at the polls and she's told, well, you need another form of identification. We need to see your utility bill. That's just an example. I'm not saying it's specific to Georgia, but we're seeing that in all parts of the country. And we are working with Stacey Abrams and her organization, Fair Fight, to identify ways in which we can overcome some of the challenges that people face in voting, and specifically in states where they have voter suppression tactics that are running rampant. We're seeing that. So we're working on voter suppression issues. We are also working to make sure that members of our community who face challenges in voting understand what those challenges are and can utilize alternatives. For example, a transgender person shows up to vote. They're asked for their driver's license or some type of identification. The identification does not align with the person's physical representation. And so they're told, well, this driver's license doesn't really look like you. So as a result, we are not going to allow you to vote. Mm. What we're trying to do is make sure that all members of our community understand some of the tactics that are being used to block them from exercising their rights to vote, and make sure that they understand other alternatives, from absentee balloting to voting by mail, to all of the different options that may be available in their states. It's not available in every state, but we want to make sure that people understand what those options are. So you'll be hearing a lot more about that over the next few weeks and months.
And that's so important, that having all of those major issues and major concerns for a lot of people addressed and know where that they can go. And then they know that HRC is on the front line of helping people navigate those experiences, especially around the electoral process.
Yes, and what's great is to see that there are plans in place. But I'm sure with this pandemic, some changes may have come about with any strategies that you might have thought that you were going to implement this year. So does this pandemic cause any change to strategies or plans that you had in place before?
Yes. So if you think of traditional political organizing or field organizing, it involves door knocking in most cases, right? You're going in different districts and you're engaging with the electorate. Maybe you're having events to make sure that people are aware of the issues or the candidates. As we go through this pandemic, we have to recognize that those strategies may not be as available to us over the next few weeks and months. People may not feel comfortable walking into a crowded room to talk about politics. People may not be comfortable with you coming to their door, to knock on their door, to talk about a ballot initiative or someone who is running for Congress or running for the state legislature. So I mentioned before an app that we have launched. We will be publicizing it in more detail over the next few weeks and months, that effectively allows people to do political organizing remotely, allows them to do it virtually. Because even if we're able to get to the point where there is a vaccine, we don't anticipate that vaccine will materialize for, some are saying 18 months, some are saying a year. And unless we can all develop some type of immune defense to the virus, many people will still have concerns about going into places or engaging with people who they may not know. So we are launching a variety of tools, including the app, to make sure that we can engage in political organizing, that we can talk to equality voters, that we can raise the concerns that we have in a very loud, vocal, impactful way, so that we have an impact on this election.
Wow, that's what it is. I'm so glad to hear that. So glad to hear that. And Rayceen, what do you think about how this may be affecting just how LGBT people in general?
Well, I think it will forever change it will forever impact the LGBT community and how we manage after the pandemic is over. What do you think, Alphonso?
Well, I think this pandemic will change how we work, how we live, how we interact with other people. We can learn from other pandemics. We learned from the HIV/AIDS epidemic that it changed culture. It changed how we interface with each other, but it also amplified, and a colleague of mine said this recently, it amplifies the injustices and the marginalization that have sort of permeated all of our lives in all of our cultures for decades. So we are talking about 1 out of 5 LGBTQ people live in poverty. That's before COVID-19. 1 out of 5 LGBTQ people lived in poverty. So now with COVID-19, it's worse. We know that the industries that are affected, more than 5 million LGBTQ people work in industries that are disproportionately impacted. So we're talking about food and service industries. We're talking about retail. We're talking about the education system. More than 2 million LGBTQ people work in food, service, and restaurants. And most of those members of our community have been laid off. So if they're already living in poverty and they've lost their jobs and they don't have access to healthcare, they are in a much worse position than others in our country. So COVID-19, I think, will change how we live, how we work, how we interface with each other. Remote work, I think, will become a lot more relevant to people. I think businesses will be forecasting how they can engage with remote work in a way to the extent it doesn't compromise their ability to achieve their mission and their objectives. But I think it will change a lot. And until there is a vaccine, I also anticipate that it will change how we establish relationships. Because people will be concerned about how does this affect me if I don't have a vaccine, if I don't have an immune defense to COVID-19, and I have never contracted COVID-19, do I take a different approach to dating, right? So I think it's going to change so many different aspects of our lives.
And that's so true and so important. But one thing that stands out, one word that stands out in my mind is resilience. The resilience of the LGBT community to always rise above and persevere and move forward. The resilience of our people. So, and I think that's so important. So, Krylios.
Of course, well, thank you as always for joining us, Alphonso. Thank you so much. We hastily look forward to our return to our home at HRC on first Wednesdays. We are looking forward to it, and to continue this wonderful partnership between the Ask Rayceen show and HRC. We look forward to returning, hopefully before the end of the year. But until then, sign us out, Rayceen.
Oh, thank you so much, Alphonso, for being our guest this afternoon or this evening or this morning, however folks are doing this.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
And most of all, thank you for watching.